If you think it's too early in the season to start making trades, you're missing out on some great opportunities to buy and sell. Let's go 3 up and 3 down with some buy low and sell high candidates for fantasy baseball. This might draw some rolling of the eyes, but I'm going to start with a guy I was high on the preseason, maybe a little too high, we'll find out, and now is on the injured list already. That's Eloy Jimenez. If you caught my bold predictions before the season started, you know that I called Eloy as the home run champ in the AL. Again, bold predictions, probably not going to happen, but I'm saying there's a chance. Now here's the problem with Eloy Jimenez. He's hurt again, and that's what has been his biggest bugaboo over his major league career. Can't stay on the field for too long, which is hard to even imagine now that he's the DH and still getting hurt. So when we first heard the reports that he had a hamstring injury, was going to be out 3 to 4 weeks, a lot of people just chalked it up to a lost season again. Yeah, you threw him on the IL list, but you all of a sudden dropped your hopes dramatically for what he would do this season. Well, I see this as the perfect buying opportunity. Turns out it wasn't as severe an injury, and he might even be back by the weekend. So very short IL stint, not a major injury, and so the time missed is almost insignificant. What this injury did was serve to lower his value, or at least his perceived value. I already thought he was a great draft value because, again, you're getting the injury discount here and you know what he is capable of when he is healthy. Now, there's almost no sample size to look at here because he only logged 19 at-bats before getting hurt. But look at what happened in those 19 at-bats, and yes, we can take something away. Now, there's a lot of stats that you really can't even quantify or get anything from until you have a big enough sample. There's one thing, the first thing that is a telling StatCast stat, maximum exit velocity. What MaxEV does is basically tell you what is that hardest hit ball that you have. So if you have a guy like an Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, the guys who are always on that leaderboard, they just hit the ball harder than any other human is capable of doing. Eloy is among that elite. He's been among the leaders at MaxEV over the past few seasons, and just in that first week of action, he already got onto the leaderboard. And in 19 at-bats, already had 3 barrels. All we need is for him to actually accumulate some more plate appearances, and those home runs, those extra base hits, they'll start coming in. The fact is this injury was just a hammy, had nothing to do with upper body, arm, wrist, nothing that should affect his swing. I know that you're worried. It's going to happen again. There's always something with this guy. And look, who am I to tell you it's not going to happen again? Of course you have that risk. And look, the White Sox, for whatever reason, they just needed like a permanent medical tent near the dugout there. Tim Anderson is hurt. There's always somebody hurt. Right now, I will say that Eloy, he's going to be back. This is the time to buy low on him because someone just doesn't want to bother with the fact that he's already banged up. Now let me talk about a young player who is a great value I thought was going too late in drafts, and projection systems are with me on this. Vinny Pasquantino, young first baseman for the Kansas City Royals. Well, he, just like every other Kansas City Royal, is off to a very slow start. The top of that order was supposed to be one of the most exciting young offenses in the league, is just a big dud in the first couple of weeks. Royals currently sitting with the lowest team batting average in the majors, 3rd lowest in runs scored. Now a guy like Bobby Witt, struggling a little bit, but look, nobody's selling him at this point, and they're certainly not going to sell low. Here he does have 2 homers, 2 stolen bases. Don't bother trying to get him. You're going to overpay. But Vinny P is one of those guys who is kind of a low-end option at his position. I mean, we don't really see a path for him to be one of the top players. He's not a 40 homer type of guy, not going to lead the league in RBIs, being that he's in Kansas City. And so what we're looking for is that balance across multiple categories. He's going to have to really be consistent. That's going to be the key. And so when you get off to a slow start, that kind of dims people's hopes. And you know what? That turnaround is already happening. This is one of the dangers of doing a fantasy baseball video. Things change on a nightly basis. So as I speak, he's coming off a game where he had 3 base hits, 2 of which were doubles. So we're already seeing that average climb. Now, you know what fantasy owners in roto leagues, especially people, want is the home runs, is those big games. And you know what? Pasquantino will be solid, but he's not a sexy pick. But that's why I like trying to get him at this point where you can still pretty much buy low on him. If you're familiar with the projection systems that map out how players should or could do for the rest of the season, well, the most reliable and the best is ATC, done by a friend of mine, Ariel Cohen. His projections, which are available on Fangraphs, have Vinny P finishing with an offensive rating comparable to Nate Lowe and Jose Abreu. You already know Abreu's resume, one of the top first basemen in the league for the past decade, and Nate Lowe had a great season last year. Well, if Pasquantino can finish with similar numbers to those guys, you've got yourself at least a top 10 first baseman. If you're still scrambling at first base because you drafted Rhys Hoskins, or if you waited and took a chance on a guy like Josh Bell or Rowdy Tellez, this is the time to make a move for a young player who should be solid all year long. And you know what? I'm going to keep it going with the Royals and throw out a player here that a lot of people really want no part of, and I'm really trying to figure out why, although I kind of have some suspicions. You may not even know that Aroldis Chapman is a Kansas City Royal this year. You do probably know that he was exiled from the Yankees, lost that closer job last year, was briefly demoted. A lot of people think just doesn't have it anymore. 35 years old, ex-closer, lost some zip maybe, pitched to his worst ERA ever. Why would we even want to touch him? Well, let me tell you why. He hasn't lost any zip on that fastball. Last year, it sat at 97.5. So far this season, like up to 99. And while a 4.46 ERA isn't great, especially for a closer, look, a lot of people are acting like he's Ricky Vaughn on a bad day, like as if he had no command whatsoever. It's not as bad as we make it seem. Why does everyone think he's washed up? Because the New York media. When you're on the Yankees, expectations, needless to say, are a little different. Now, pretty much as opposite of a market as you can get going to Kansas City, where the expectations kind of don't exist. So far, so good. Again, talking about a very tiny sample here, but in 5 innings pitched, 9 strikeouts, and currently number 1 in the majors among all pitchers in CSW with 48.3%. CSW meaning called strikes and whiffs. This is one of those advanced stats that truly tells whether a pitcher is fooling a hitter. Chapman is doing that. He's getting a ton of swinging strikes. Looks like his fastball is as good as ever. He's motivated to show that he still belongs in the league. Now here's the only question. Is he going to get saves? So far, he's got one already. Scott Barlow, who is technically the closer at this point starting the season, also has 1 save. I think it's a matter of time before talent wins out. Chapman, being the lefty, might alternate situations here. This could be kind of a timeshare, but we could still be looking at close to 20 saves for Chapman, and the strikeout numbers are there, and maybe the ratios come back as well to old form. You can basically get him for nothing, at least right now, until people catch on that he actually still looks good. I would send an offer. We can throw out a middling reliever who's getting save opportunities like a Ronaldo Lopez. Guy like Matt Brash, look, all the talent in the world, just can't find the strike zone. Chapman is, so I would rather have him, a guy who's tried and true and proven and still has the stuff. Now on the downside, who should you be selling high while you can maximize your value? I was all set to talk about Luis Arias of the Marlins because he's hitting a cool 500 so far. And you know what he did? He went out and hit for the cycle, the first cycle ever in Marlins history. That means that gives him his first homer of the season, and he's hitting 583 right now. Should we just give him the NL batting title right now? Sure, why not? He won in the AL last year in Minnesota. It's a good chance he does it again. Sounds crazy to sell a guy like that, doesn't it? Well, here's the thing. It's still kind of an empty profile for fantasy leagues. You're getting major help in one category, sure. But what are you getting in the power department? Last year, he set his career high with 8 home runs. What about speed? Last year also set his career mark with 4 stolen bases. RBIs? This is a guy who's a leadoff hitter. He's not going to be driving in many runs. And, oh yeah, he plays for the Marlins. Runs scored could be decent, but we're not looking at 100 plus because, again, the Marlins. So you get my point. This is a guy who's helping you in exactly one category. This would be like telling you, hey, there's this relief pitcher who is really good. He's going to have an amazing ERA. Look, maybe even a 0 ERA in the season, but he's not going to get you more than like 1 win, maybe 2-3 saves. Oh yeah, and he doesn't strike out guys either. Get you maybe 10 on the season. Is that the kind of pitcher that you'd be interested in? Maybe that's not apples to apples, but you get my point. a one category stud who is actually hurting you in the counting stat department, I don't think that he's going to be as profitable as people think he is. Now, if you're in a points league, or maybe you're in a league that doesn't use steals, or it's like average and OBP, something like that, okay, that might be different. But in your standard 5x5 roto league, I would flip him now when everybody's talking about him, when he's hitting like crazy. Get somebody who's going to help you a little bit more across the board. Now here's a second baseman who is helping across the board. That's Gleyber Torres in New York. Right now batting .371, couple of home runs, 5 stolen bases. Now I know we're supposed to have more steals this year. The bags are bigger, the clock and all this stuff, but Gleyber Torres only stole 10 bases all of last year, and he's got 5 already. Never really been a speedster. Right now logging a sprint speed in the 43rd percentile. What is going on here? Well, the Yankees have always been prone to let their players run. He's taking advantage of the new rules. This is what you call a crafty base stealer, not someone who's getting by just on his legs alone. But here's the problem, is they're not expecting him to run, and so he is. But I think now they'll be expecting him to run because he is. There's no way that he's going to be going for 20-25 steals this year. It's going to slow down. Now the power, that is his thing. But at this point, he's on a heater. This is a really, really good 2-week stretch. But this is also someone who's a career .267 hitter. There was some thought Torres might be on the precipice of losing his starting job because you have guys like Anthony Volpe coming up, Oswald Peraza, and all these other middle infield options. DJ LeMahieu still the utility guy there. Torres had to do this to keep his job. Look, hats off to him. He's doing it. I don't think it's long before he does cool off and regression hits. And speaking of regression, I have to talk about Marcus Stroman now. Off to a pretty good start there with the Cubbies. In 2 starts, hasn't allowed a single run, has 14 strikeouts in just 12 innings. It's not like he's getting by on a soft schedule, facing the Pirates twice or anything like that. He's faced some really good offenses with Milwaukee and Texas. I actually like Marcus Stroman. I'm a fan, and I think he is a quality pitcher, but inevitably, regression does hit. This is not somebody who's going to pile up strikeouts over his career. 20.1% K rate, not the 30% we've seen so far. We're going to expect to see those K numbers drop. There will be somewhere along the line one of these starts where he gives up 5 or 6 runs, and then all of a sudden the ERA starts to look normal, like in the 3 range. Not bad. Nothing wrong with Stroman, but right now, if you have someone who's super high in him, there's just plenty of pitchers I would rather have instead who can help me more in the strikeout department. Give me a guy like a Zach Gallen or Logan Webb who's off to a slow start, but we know has the track record. You should always be looking to make smart moves in the trade market. Don't miss my latest video on who to panic about